I'm very curious about these next two. You want to talk with Mike?
I really, really do. You
Okay.
got to talk to Mike.
Oh, this is that Mike. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Let's talk with Mike. Mike in Canada. Hello, and welcome to the show again.
Hey, folks.
Hey, Mike.
A little nervous here, but...
No worries. Eric is very excited to talk with you, so I'm going to hand you off to him and let you guys go at it.
So Mike, I've got to be honest. I did not get the chance to hear the call that you were on last. And it looks like you're calling to build on that. So could you kind of set the stage? That way I can pick up with you here.
Well, I didn't actually get on the show.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, and some of what I called about was more personal, so I skipped that.
Okay.
So that, for the purposes of the show. Because I guess my philosophy might be a little more interesting than, my personal journey.
It says that you're a polydeist.
Yeah.
What's that?
To me, it's just a philosophical perspective. It's not a God claim, as Matt Dillahunty would probably dismiss as something that's irrelevant to his concern. I would agree. I base most of my philosophy in Stoicism.
Okay.
And which, for me, follows along with what my personal morality is and how I want to be. But I view all beings as equal. So to me, as God.
Can we lift the volume up a little bit?
Oh, that's right. It's a little bit low. Sorry. Mike, you were saying that you view all deities as equal?
All beings.
Okay.
All living creatures.
What about fictitious ones?
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain is I have no problem believing we may encounter a superior extraterrestrial race. I don't necessarily believe it's out there.
We can definitely talk about extraterrestrials, but I'm specifically referencing Voldemort right now.
Okay.
Do you recognize Voldemort as a being?
Sure.
Okay. So it sounds like you have got a real loose definition of being, or at least one that I haven't heard of. So enlighten us, because if we don't understand what you mean by being,
sure.
Yeah, because I don't view Voldemort or other fictitious characters as beings. I would ascribe being to something that exists tangibly in the world, that actually has, a being would be V or myself, but it wouldn't be the butt unicorn that we are selling in our merch store.
I agree with you.
Shout out to the merch store.
Sure.
Go ahead.
What I mean is, I accept you as a being, for example, but with you, I can confirm that. I can communicate. I can investigate, just as any other situation, as I assume you would agree with. But okay. I accept the potential of beings I have not met. I just do not accept them at all as being in any way superior. Because, for example, I can take that right off. You don't accept beings that you can't confirm as superior. Fantastic. Why do you accept them at all, though? Well, I accept the potential in the sense that
maybe I got us off base here. What is a being? What is being to you?
A being to me is something that is alive.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of things.
Well, fictitious characters aren't alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not saying it well.
Okay.
And again, I make zero God claims or claims about things that cannot be demonstrated.
Then why? Then why are you a polydeist?
Because I accept that tomorrow we can discover a new species of animal.
Mm-hmm.
So I accept that as a potential to be open to that happening. I can accept that tomorrow we may discover life in space. I can accept that as a potential. Not any specific claims yet, but I can accept that as potential.
Okay.
The same I could say, and I see in potential God as the same state. I accept it as a potential, but not as any kind of fact or claims specifically, because I'll deal with that with the claims that are presented to me. So I imagine you would.
So what's the use of that? I mean, I'm just trying to think of anywhere where that line of thinking would be helpful. Like we could get hit by a meteor tomorrow, and I can accept that we can be hit by a meteor tomorrow. I'm not going to say it won't happen, but I'm also going to eat my veggies, assuming that I still need to take care of this body. And because of that, I'm not accepting that as a thing that will happen. It's just,
Absolutely.
Okay, so
can I jump in with a question real quick? So,
sure.
Mike, I'm not seeing anything that you are saying that I fundamentally disagree with outside of the label itself, if that makes sense. So I also accept the potential that tomorrow everything might change, and I would have to then evaluate that change or that new discovery based on the evidence presented to me. That's kind of the agnostic part of my own belief system, right? So I'm 100% on board with you there for the most part. I think for me, the question is, why take on the term polydeism? Because when I think of polydeism, right, I don't think I've heard that term put together before, but it sounds like what you're saying with that term is that you believe that at one point there were multiple gods, and there may or may not still be multiple gods, as deism is essentially the suggestion that a god or gods used to exist, created everything possibly, and then kind of fucked off. And we don't know if they still exist anymore. I'm just curious about why you're using this term to talk about something that I actually very much agree with, but don't see reflected in the term.
Understood. That's pretty much what you would probably find if you search the term on the internet.
Okay.
It would generally refer to somebody who believes maybe all are groups of gods who were participated in creation, perhaps, but then, took off in whatever reason on their own, and therefore left us to be who we are, or something to that effect. My take is different. It's more, the concept of a god, or at least the concepts that have presented to me, don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way to relate, it's more of a compassion thing. To me, compassion is the only thing that holds us together, regardless of language or anything else. Compassion is the source of our success, in my opinion. Before we could talk, it was our compassion and our community, our whether it was our DNA that told us to be social creatures. That compassion is what drives us to even care about what someone else or something else thinks.
I mean, I would agree to an extent that things like mirror neurons exist and help to, biologically connect people and add that kind of empathy to the equation. I'm still just confused about why you are claiming a belief in a thing that you have already said so far doesn't exist. Like, it might exist tomorrow, but right now it doesn't, at least to your knowledge.
Yeah. What makes you different from us?
Yeah.
Well, what am I claiming doesn't exist? I guess.
Well,
I'm
you're
not making a claim.
Yeah, no, you're saying, from my understanding, you're saying all the God claims that you've heard thus far don't make sense. So you don't necessarily believe in those. And there might be gods that you do believe in tomorrow if presented with sufficient evidence. But in this moment, it feels like you're making maybe not a positive claim, but certainly the assumption is that you are not convinced by any existing God claims, and you have not yet heard any God claims that would convince you, although you admit you might one day. So right now, it sounds like you don't believe in any gods. So my question is, why use a theistic label for yourself?
It sounds like you're an agnostic atheist.
And you can call me that. Absolutely fine. Again, it's really just a way for me to be able to communicate with other people who aren't of the same mind.
But the thing is, if you're looking for useful communication and you can hear how muddy that definition has made things, I think that that's an impediment to communication and not helping, if that's what your goal is.
Well, I think that the conversation around what you believe and why is always interesting. And I think this was an interesting call. I do also think that if you want, I understand the impetus in not taking on a label that is inflammatory or has been associated with inflammatory people, and you wanting to not associate with that label in order to better further conversations with people who might be put off by it. Absolutely understand that as well. I would suggest rethinking the polydeism thing, just because more often than not, at least in the conversations that I've had with people who, move into the pantheism, polydeism kind of space, it ends up dominating the conversation as opposed to facilitating a larger and better one, right? So instead of us having a really great conversation about how we can know things and the certainty or lack thereof of the future, we've gotten stuck on that label and have tried to dissect it, which, while interesting, maybe wasn't where you wanted to go with this call. So maybe thinking about the term you use to communicate your beliefs with people. But I totally understand the desire to not use specific labels because you think it would hinder conversation.
That's, I think, a very good point. And I have a term that I have used, but I thought it would be a little more confusing. But you tell me this. I considered it initially pragmatism, meaning here's the situation. If the God claim is proven to be true, my philosophy still has the same answer for it. So pragmatism was what I kind of thought of. Polydeism kind of explained to people rather quickly maybe how to approach me when I'm discussing it. But
okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of a mouthful, but it's actually pretty interesting. And I think it gets rid of the confusion around what polytheism and polydeism might bring to the table. So I'd say workshop it. Try having that conversation with a couple people. We are going to need to move on to the next call, but Mike, this was interesting. I love talking about definitions of things.
Yeah.
Just for it. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to both of you.
Thanks so much, Mike.
And I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your day.
You